was 11 or 12 or 13, some of the stories that I most enjoyed reading were the Greek myths, and particularly the Greek myths as they were collected in Bullfinch's mythology. And the Greek myths, those stories of the gods and goddesses of Olympus, and all of the heroes and heroines with their strengths of character and their flaws, have provided countless plots and characters and themes for poets and novelists and playwrights throughout the ages. But the stories themselves still have a great deal to offer. The story I'm going to tell you tonight is an abridgment of the story that is found of Theseus and the Minotaur, as it's found in Bullfinch's mythology. Theseus, the hero of our story, had two fathers. One was Poseidon, the god of the sea, and his human father was Aegeus, the king of Athens. When Theseus was born, Aegeus decided that he should leave the child with his mother Aethra, and he would return to Athens. But before he left, he hid a pair of sandals and a sword under a heavy boulder with instructions that when the boy came of age, he should be told about them. Theseus grew into a fine young man. He was strong, he was intelligent, and he was full of courage. And when he was about 16, Aethra told him about the gifts that had been left for him under the rock. And he used his strength and his ingenuity to create a pulley so that he could raise this heavy boulder. And then he strapped on the sword and put on the sandals, and he set off to Athens to meet his father. And along the way, he had many, many exploits and adventures. And rumors and stories of his exploits went ahead of him, so that when he arrived in Athens, he was greeted as a conquering hero. Now, King Aegeus had married Medea, a great sorceress, and Medea realized who this popular young man was. But Aegeus had not yet seen his son, and he wasn't sure who he was. Medea persuaded him that this young man would come and usurp his throne. And she convinced Aegeus that perhaps it would be wise to get rid of Theseus by poisoning him. Medea was fearful of losing her influence with the king. But at the very last minute, as Aegeus was presenting the poisoned cup to Theseus, his eye fell upon the sword, and he recognized it as his own that he had left so many years before. The plot was foiled. Theseus was welcomed into the Athenian court, and for her treachery, Medea was exiled. You'll have to excuse me, I have a dry mouth. Theseus, as I say, was a very intelligent young man, and it wasn't too long before he perceived that there was a heavy, brooding sadness over all of Athens. And it wasn't long before he discovered why. Some years before, the great navies of King Minos of Crete had besieged Athens, not once, but many times. And the Athenians had suffered great hardships and privations during this time. Finally, in desperation, they pleaded with their king to treat with Minos because they would give anything, anything to have peace once again. But the tribute that was exacted was bitter and terrible. Every year, 7 Athenian youths and 7 Athenian maidens were chosen by lottery to sail on a death ship to Crete, where they were to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. When Theseus learned of this, he immediately volunteered to be one of the youths. And And his father pleaded with him and remonstrated with him that he should not go. But Theseus was insistent and determined. And so, before he and the rest of the young people left on this death ship, he exacted a promise from his son that if he was successful in killing the Minotaur, that he would change the black sails of the ship for white ones before he returned home. And this Theseus promised. King Minos of Crete was an interesting character. He was the son of Zeus and the nephew of Poseidon, the god of the sea. He had been favored by the gods in so many ways. He had a great kingdom. He had successful and brave navies. And he had a very beautiful daughter, Ariadne. But Minos had got rather used to being favored by the gods. And he had had so many favors that he began to think that no matter what he did, the gods would forgive him. One day, he asked to have a fine white bull brought to him, that he might make a sacrifice of it in honor of his uncle Poseidon. But when the bull came, it was so magnificent and so handsome that Minos could not bear to sacrifice it. And so he hid it amongst his own herds and sacrificed a lesser animal. But you know, you can't fool the gods. And Poseidon was outraged and insulted. And in revenge, he caused Queen Pasiphae, the wife of Minos, to become inflamed with an insatiable passion for the white bull. And the offspring of their illicit coupling was the Minotaur, a strange creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, and a voracious and cruel appetite for human flesh. Now Minos did not dare kill the Minotaur, and so he commissioned Daedalus, the master craftsman of Crete, to build a labyrinth, a structure full of twists and turns, blind ends, blind alleyways, and meanderings, that at its very center, the monster might live. All who had entered the labyrinth never returned. When Theseus and the rest of the young people from Athens arrived in Crete, they were paraded before King Minos, and a great celebratory feast was held for them. And at the banquet, Theseus caught the eye of the beautiful Princess Ariadne. That night, she slipped to the place where he was sleeping, and she said, "I will help you escape certain death, but only if you will take me with you when you leave with the young people." Theseus agreed that he would be glad to do this, and she gave him a sword and a spool of thread. That night, Theseus entered the labyrinth, and as he entered, he unspooled the thread as he made his way into the center of the labyrinth, where he found and slew the sleeping Minotaur. Then he retraced his steps, following the thread that he had unspooled. He gathered together the young people and Ariadne. They all quietly slipped onto the boat, and they slipped away in the dead of night. But as they sailed through the Greek islands, Theseus had a dream. And in the dream, it was foretold that Ariadne was to be the bride of Jason. And so it was that Theseus slipped away and abandoned Ariadne as she lay sleeping on the island of Naxos. Now word had gone ahead to Athens that the ship was returning, and Aegeus hurried down to the shore. And when he saw the ship in the distance, he let out a howl of anguish, for when he saw the ship, it wasn't as he had hoped, and he flung himself into the sea and drowned. For you see, Theseus as he was preoccupied with Ariadne, had forgotten to switch the sails from the black to the white. And so it was that Theseus became the king.